Real talk, raw truth, raging hearts. Welcome to From the Minds of Raging Brats. Like, share, and subscribe.
Hi, welcome to From the Minds of Raging Brats. I'm Heather.
And I'm Ashley.
How's your weekend?
It's been pretty good. Slow. At least I'm not working as much as I was last week, so I'm grateful for that. How are you doing?
I'm here. I'm hanging in. I'm sleep deprived and struggling with that, but it's a work in progress, and here we are. So I think we'll just get into it. This week, trigger warning in advance, we will definitely be talking about serial killers. We will also be talking about the mental health behind that. So today we are diving into something dark, the psychology of serial killers, but not for shock value. We're peeling back what these people actually share in common with the rest of us and how easily any of us could slide towards the edge without the right help. We're not here to glorify them or sensationalize violence. We're here to look in the mirror to ask what happens when human wiring, trauma, and neglect collide.
And, by the time this episode comes out, I think it's going to be perfect timing. It's going to be officially spooky week, right? And time for Halloween. And it really feeds that, dark fascination that a lot of people have with this subject.
Yeah, I think that was part of what we were going for. But this, while doing the research for this episode, it kind of took a different angle than where I thought I was going. So, it worked out. But it definitely kind of took me aback for a minute. So, segment 1, what makes a serial killer? For context, true crime culture loves the myth of the born monster. Our focus is to expose the spectrum of traits from ordinary to pathological. Because realistically, serial killers, they're not supernatural. They're human. Just human without the breaks, without the safety, self-preservation trigger that says, don't do that because this will end your life.
Mm-hmm. And that's honestly, I think, what makes them so scary for people, their fascination with them, because it's easy to think they're horrible monsters or demons or whatever, but when you get down to it, and the fact that they're just people, just like you, going to the shopping mall, buying their kids' birthday presents, all of that stuff, it's the same things they do. And that's terrifying.
I think a lot of people do block that out or separate it in order to be able to sleep at night, because the idea that any of us could be a serial killer is just terrifying, but it's also the reality.
Yes.
And I think that we need to talk more about that, and people haven't really been open to that. But realistically, a lot of the state of the world that we're in right now really shows where the lack of empathy and compassion is really starting to shine through in humanity, which means we're setting ourselves up to create a lot more serial killers.
Yeah.
So, that was a really short segment, but moving into segment 2, the shared traits, the common threads. Before we break these down, remember these are patterns, not excuses. Recognizing patterns gives us early warning signs in ourselves, in our families, in our communities, in our kiddos. And it's not a bad thing to notice something that's detrimental to somebody so that you can get them therapy or whatever kind of help that they need to get through that and be able to express those emotions in a healthy way or those feelings in a healthy way without maybe having to really seriously fantasize some dark stuff to the point of then proceeding into the dark.
Yes, and with so many other mental health issues, like this included, like chances were if certain things were caught or known about or cared about enough to be taken care of, a lot of the tragedy that happened could have probably, if not for sure, been prevented.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know that they say that there's no like checklist in general to find a serial killer, and I definitely agree with that. But I think that there are definitely some key things in all of the serial killers that stand out because some of them were key factors that had those people gotten more support because of, they might not necessarily have gone down the path because they wouldn't have had the chance for prolonged fantasies and stuff that then pushed them over the edge when the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
General traits observed across all offenders. A, early life and developmental. 1, childhood trauma or neglect. 2, social isolation. 3, fascination with death, control, or cruelty. And 4, fantasy as a refuge. Any of those in and of themselves can cause mental illness and severe problems in adult life. But together with somebody that is predispositioned because of any number of factors, it becomes a lot more dangerous because you don't know where their control level actually lands.
Well, there's also a good chance that half the time they don't know where their own control level lands.
Well, and if they have neurodivergence like ADHD, schizophrenia, bipolar, BPD, a lot of those come with impulse control issues already.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're triggered and in a different state of mind and all of a sudden you have no impulse control on top of it, recipe for disaster.
Yeah, there's that, and I think so many people try to look for like the cause of it. They always think like, oh, something horrendous must have happened to them, either in childhood or whatever. But the most common thing of all serial killers was severe and chronic neglect. Now, whether that was perceived neglect or actual neglect are arguable.
Well, that's like, okay, let's take, for example, because we're going to talk about him later, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
In most of his things, they talk about how he had such a normal upbringing and there was no real reason. How do you say that he had a normal upbringing when before the age of 5 or 6, he was doing taxidermy with his dad? Now, I get that taxidermy is not necessarily a bad hobby to have, but that's something you don't introduce to somebody until they're like 16 and 17, 18 and older, when they understand the difference between life and death, real and fake. Not somebody that's impressionable and doesn't know anything about death and now they're fascinated.
Well, even his father had said, like, it was always a very distant relationship. I did not know how to bond with anybody, let alone my child. And he's like, hindsight, I realized that we didn't have a real relationship. We never had deep conversations. We were never, like, knew anything about each other. We just lived in the same space.
Well, and then to continue, again, first of all, that is not normal. I don't care what they classified it as back then. It was not normal. Yeah. Of course, that's going to lead to a serious fascination with death. But also, as a young adult, a young teen, his mom has a psychotic break and takes his baby brother, but doesn't want him.
Yeah.
So he's left behind for months to live on his own in this house when all of a sudden his dad comes home with his new wife, girlfriend, whatever, and they take over and all of a sudden he's the parent again when he's been living his own life for years, taking care of his mom and his sibling, and now his mom left and he feels not only unwanted but also free. Then his dad comes back and now all of a sudden he's a kid again.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, not to get too much into his story because we will get into it, but it is that Prissy neglect. Yes, there was technically a parent there. Yes, there was technically whatever, but he was still very alone. Like, in his mind, and a lot of serial killers, like, that, a lot of people are like, they had such a good childhood, but they had both parents, like, were both parents actually there? Physically, emotionally, like, mentally, did the child know? Like, because, again, this is the one biggest tying factor of not all serial killers, but a good majority of them went through this as a young child.
Yeah. Okay. Next section B, personality and emotion. Narcissism / grandiosity, lack of empathy or shallow affect, emotional detachment, disassociation, need for control and dominance, low impulse control, thrill seeking / risk taking. And, you know, I hate that I'm going to say this, but it's real. Because we already have such a hard time and a stigma, but BDSM is such an outlet for people that could go that way without getting into the need, if it's done early enough with therapies and stuff. That can be such an outlet for people like that need certain things that very well lead them to becoming serial killers. That could be a preventative. Like, they need to really consider that sometimes sex therapy, whether it's actual sexual intimacy or just BDSM, because BDSM doesn't always have sex acts involved in scenes. Sometimes
No.
their clothes never even come off. You know that, I know that, but they're very therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like, in Amsterdam, they consider sex part of your health, and, people that are on disability don't make their own money. There's actually part of their stipend that is to go into the brothels, to whatever, because their government realize sexually happy and active people are usually less violent. Not always, again, but usually, especially because it's such an open part of their culture. It's not like, it's very hard to get shame passed to you because what you like in the bedroom over there. They're just like, yes, and you can go here. There's nobody to do that.
Yeah. But that's a good thing. Like, I feel like a lot of these people, if they had support, if those things had been identified early on and they had been given the right supports, they never would have evolved to that point.
Oh, yeah. Especially because I think shame goes into a lot of these killers' early childhoods. So the BDSM community, it's so much about talking openly, because there's going to be somebody out there that likes what you like, whether you believe it or not. Like, the ability to say what you like and find that person openly instead of trying to hide it and, oh, I'm a bad person, oh, nobody's going to like me, blah, blah, blah. The community can be so accepting when you get into the right areas of it. It could truly be healing for a lot of people, as long as they did it right and safe.
Well, and like, because we've already brought him up with Jeffrey, he was gay too. And that was not socially acceptable when he was alive and doing the things he was doing. Had it been socially acceptable and he'd been able to be like, listen, I feel out of place because I like guys instead of girls, and everybody in my family wants me to like girls, there would have been a therapist going, let's get you into transitional housing, into some LGBTQ community housing, and get you away from your parents so you can start to be who you are.
Exactly. Or even if it was like nowadays, let's say, like, most parents I know, when their kids come out and they're like, yeah, ditto. Like, there's not as much, like, yes, it's still a shame in other However, it's a lot more openly talked about. You can find friends, you can find a second family, like, whereas before it was, nah, everybody in town's gonna beat your motherfucking ass until you go have your lavender marriage and shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And I think that also the different stigmas through different times have created it. It's like some of the serial killers were into cross-dressing during times when that was absolutely not okay. And so, of course, as you're hiding and compartmentalize different things that you think are crimes when they're not, I mean, even if the law thinks they're crimes, like wearing women's clothing when you're not a woman, I don't care if the law says it's a crime. That shouldn't be a crime.
Right.
And back then there were laws that said stuff like that. So I do understand that, but I also understand that that's part of the reason why it pushes those people that already have impulse control issues and maybe some serious fucked up fantasies. Like, I know that the show was dramatized and stuff, but like, could you imagine if you're schizophrenic and you start crushing on one of the lead Nazi commanders, and in your mind you're creating all these scenarios, and you've read that she makes lamps and stuff out of skin, and now all of a sudden you are having delusions where she's actually in your town, in places where you are frequenting and speaking to you and telling you you're handsome, but you know the only way to impress her is by killing people in a creative way.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to end up, you're schizophrenic, you think you're in reality when you're not. Of course you're going to end up killing people. You're trying to impress a lady.
Yeah, and when you're in that deep of your delusion, you don't even see why that would be wrong. Like, you're just trying to find love, man.
Yeah. But imagine if, like, I know, again, the series is dramatized, but in the series, like, his brother is normal. His brother's trying to leave when he kills him. He's trying to go be with a woman and live a normal life. He doesn't want to be around his mom anymore. And he's telling his brother, you got to get out too, because she's not, the lights ain't all on up there.
Yeah.
Which is actually what in the series drives him to end his brother. Like, you can't talk about mama that way. But like, imagine if he had supports for his autism, and they had recognized in infancy that his mom was a wackadoodle, and, you know, supported the dad to take care of him, because the dad seemed like, other than he was an alcoholic, you know, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. He just seemed like he was afraid of her.
Well, that's understandable.
And the way that she said, you haven't worked since we've been together, made it sound like he used to be very hardworking, and then she came along.
Yeah.
And scared every single thought that wasn't dictated by her out of his head. And if that's the case, why would you go to work? Like, you know, it's not going to be appreciated. You know, you're going to be berated, probably beat up for it anyways. Might as well stay here and get drunk so the fucking bullshit comes at least with numbness.
Yeah, and that's another, like, really common point between a lot of these killers. If they didn't have negligent parents, they had highly abusive, and these things were chronic, by the way. They didn't just get left at home for like 20 minutes and it scared them, or their parent patted them on the ass. No, they got rocked in a horrific ways, a lot. And with some of these killers, they had polar opposite parents. So one would either love them, shower them with attention, protect them, whatever, while the other parent was angry, controlling, scary, or it went into, you have a gone parent or a negligent parent, and then the other one is just horrendous. Just absolutely horrendous. And so you constantly have this push-pull opposite like thing, and especially for a child, normal, steady relationships that are calm and healthy are confusing. Can you imagine that? Like, that does something to a person.
Yeah. Then we move into cognitive and behavioral, fantasy reversal, dehumanization of others, compartmentalization or double lives. Like, BTK, he felt like he was living two different lives at the same time.
Oh yeah, and that was part of his, like, not just his fantasy reversal, but like his reward system to himself, to feel like he was outsmarting everybody around him. Whether that was the police, the journalists, his wife and his children, like,
Everybody.
yeah.
Moral disengagement, superficial charm, and manipulation. Yeah, they get good at that. They definitely learn to adapt, and if they're like psychopaths, they don't feel emotions, so they learn to mimic emotions.
Yeah.
But, mimicking is still not feeling.
Yeah. And, like, again, let's go back to Dahmer for a second. Like, that surface level charm and manipulation. The man acted injured. He literally asked somebody to help him find his puppy, and he seemed so charming. Because of course he did. How the hell else do you get these women to willingly get in your car?
Well, and I've said this to you before, I've said this to many people before, I said this to Rowan while I was doing the research for this episode. Ted Bundy, Dahmer, I'm sure there were others, but either one of those gentlemen, had I met them in a bar and they had picked me up, I'd be on their list because I'd have gone.
Yeah.
Like, they were handsome men.
And that talked well, didn't seem creepy, like, very well put together. It's not like they were walking around with a cleaver and meat stains all over them, like...
Nope. I'd have been served on a platter, because
yeah.
I'd have been like, let's go! Next, biological and neurological. Head trauma, brain injury, traumatic brain injury, we talked about that. Hormonal imbalance, testosterone, stress hormones, sleep deprivation, and substance abuse. Those are all mind-altering issues.
Oh, yeah. There's been a few killers that have openly stated their first kill was under the influence, and not that whatever they were doing made them kill somebody, but it made it easier. It made them not care. It made them be like, yeah, I wanted to do this for a long time and now I'm hype, like, kind of thing. Or hallucinogens that went into sacrificial bullshit, whatever.
Yeah. They also, like, we talked about hormone levels, because I guess testosterone levels have been brought up a lot when it comes to serial killers, but and they don't have scientific evidence because they haven't done enough research on it, because apparently nobody else has ever asked this question. But my question was, I wonder if these men had high estrogen levels as a child, because especially with my youngest, that was supremely violent as a small child, broke his dad's back at 6 years old, like, supremely violent, had extraordinarily high estrogen levels as a small child.
Yeah.
That they could not explain why.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had a cousin that basically that was the same thing, and he lost it for a little while. He went violent for a while, and it ended up being one of his meds, which is now an illegal med in the U.S. because of how bad it fucked his hormones and how violent he became. Like, but the doctor let her say, oh yeah, that's basically just making estrogen all day. It does not stop for that kid because of this one med. And we're like, oh, Nobody told us this could be a side effect, but cool.
Yeah, that's not fun. Our next is situational and social, triggering stressors like rejection, loss, humiliation. And then, the main one, opportunity and isolation. If you're in the right place at the wrong time and that serial killer's at the right place at the right time, sucks for you.
Well, that, and also going back to what made these people, isolation is such a big part of a lot of their stories, whether they were with their family or whatever, out in the middle of nowhere, or they were part of a religion that kept them super like controlled, and you don't talk to nobody, you have to follow all the rules, like things like that. Being around no other children their whole lives, growing up and having no idea how to socialize with anybody, like, and that also goes back into the shame. Like, it's a big part of their psychological makeup.
Yeah, I believe it. That's why we're pointing this out in these episodes, because it's important that people understand it's not something that can't happen to anybody out there.
Yep.
Because it can.
Well,
given the right circumstances, anybody.
Think about prisoners who are put on isolation for years. And then they have to either return to society or general pot or whatever, and we expect them not to be violent, not to have regressed in some way of their control. But every psychological book you will read says isolation is one of the most damaging things for the human brain.
And me, I love isolation.
Yeah, well,
I'm weirdo though. Most of us have a few of those traits. The difference is in control, empathy, and support. That's what stops them from growing into something dangerous. Segment 3, neurodivergence and the missing safety trigger. Every one of these killers was neurodivergent in some way. ADHD, autism, OCD, bipolar, trauma, something in the wiring was different. That difference doesn't make someone violent, but it changes how the brain processes empathy, impulse, and consequences. Common neurodivergent patterns are executive dysfunction, impulsivity, and poor inhibition, emotional dysregulation, obsessional thinking and looping fantasies, sensory over or underreaction, black and white thinking, disassociation, and trauma flashback loops. For most neurotypical people, there's an internal voice that says, stop, this will ruin your life. In some neurodivergent or traumatized brains, that safety switch doesn't fire. The fear, guilt, or long-term consequence just don't register. So it's like the safety lock is broken. The gun still fires, there's just no safety.
Yeah. And for any of our audience that may be listening to this and they're like, oh no, that sounds familiar. Like, again, it takes many of these different things combined in different ways to create a serial killer. Like, for the longest time, like, I had impulsivity control, I had anger control, I wanted, and I had control issues in general. Like, I wanted control of everything. Nothing could be like a minute late. Everything had to be in its place. Everything had to go according to plan, or I'd freak out bad. Like, and I could become violent. Like, but through a lot of work, a lot of meditation, some taking things to help me rebuild connections and make things go differently, like, I could change my behavior. Was I ever at risk of becoming a serial killer? We're never gonna know at this point, and I am thankful for it. Just know if you're worried, go talk to a counselor. Half the time they're gonna tell you if you're worried about it, you might just be okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt to seek out support and help if you are worried.
Never. Because
let me tell you, there were points in my lives where I was worried and I went into therapy and they were like, you should have been worried.
Yeah, I'm not going to say everybody's the same. Like, and there's definitely been points in my life where if things hadn't worked differently, I might still be in a padded room, but things worked differently and I did the hard work, just like you've done the hard work to not do that. And luckily, that's not where our past took us.
Well, and again, that's the support. That literally is the support that you have. And that's why, I think that this episode ended up veering in this direction, because I think more people need to understand that A, anybody's at risk, and B, it's important that if you notice signs that you might be headed in that direction, that that is the time to make the call, not after the first one hits the ground. Just gonna throw that out there. This is not the song by shoot, I forget the band's name right now, but it's not Bodies. This is not Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Drowning Pool.
Yeah,
This is not Drowning Pool. Segment 4, support versus stigma. Neurodivergence isn't the villain. Neglect is. When people are different but unsupported, shamed, misdiagnosed, or isolated, those broken safety switches never get fixed. Support closes the gap. Stigma widens it. That is so important for people to understand. Stigma is the main problem, not the people. And I'm not saying that we're going to solve every world problem when it comes to serial killers by, giving everybody hugs and telling them they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But what I am saying is that we very much can cure the problem for everybody if you give in lots of support and put in the work and everybody puts in the work.
Yeah.
Nobody can get you there without the work being done by you, though.
That's a big one. And also, like we've already talked about, like child abuse is a big part of this problem. If you see something or you think something about the nice kid next door, but blah, 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 like, report it. Report it. How many of these people would not have grown up to be who they were if they were just taken away from these horrendous parents doing long-term psychological damage?
Yeah. Plus, I want people to understand that trauma has a severe effect on everything, not just your body, but how your mind works. And a lot of these people, had they been removed at a very early age when the trauma first started, they would probably, most of them, have gifts beyond their imagination. Because if they're still functioning and intelligent enough to carry conversations and stuff after severe trauma and abuse, what kind of genius were they before?
No.
It's not about being broken. It's about not being given the right tools for your wiring. That's why we need to scream from the rooftops. Support people early. Support them often. And we prevent tragedies before they start. And I mean that so much. It's really important that we stop ignoring people with problems or neurodivergence because it's uncomfortable and it's hard. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's hard. Because we're fucking individuals that are unique. It's not going to be less hard if it's somebody different.
No.
It's going to be the exact same amount of hard unless it's somebody that you know personally. And then, it might be a little bit harder because it might hurt or because they might be coming after you for your money or some shit because now they've seen you where you are. You just don't know. But it's important to get these supports going to make people aware, for other people to be making noise when it comes to these supports not being available.
Yeah.
Because it's very important.
And today we have so many resources, so many counseling centers, so many things that we didn't have in the 60s, 70s, 80s when we were very first starting to understand this. And that's a godsend.
Yeah. And we will get better with time. But it comes with removing the stigmas and having the conversations. Oh, sorry. Moving into segment 5, case studies and quotes. Let's start with Ted Bundy. We serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands, and there will be more of your children dead tomorrow. Direct quote.
And unfortunately, he is not wrong.
No, he wasn't. And he was a law student. a campaign volunteer, a charming, steady boyfriend. Before arrest, he insisted he was not that type of person, even after initial arrest, until he was irrefutably deemed to be the person. He tried and tried to tell them this is
He could
horrendous. I would never
never.
do this. I'm not this kind of person. I'm just a normal guy. This is sick. This is wrong. Post capture, analytical, detached, very self-aware.
Yes. And honestly, in my opinion, obviously I don't know the man, I never seen him, I never met him, but I feel that was more of the mask slipping off into the you already know. So now I don't have to pretend to be this nice, charming the person I made you perceive me to be.
Yeah. Well, and his main traits, his focus traits that got him through a lot of it was his charm, his ability to compartmentalize, his lack of guilt, and his fantasy rehearsals of almost all of his crimes.
Yep, and his
But
manipulation.
but the reason that I brought up the neurodivergence and the impulsivity is because, like, I do know a few things about Ted Bundy. And, like, one of the killings that he did where he just pulled up to a stop sign, saw a person, and then shot them point blank. And I called them over to ask them directions or something, and then shot them point blank in the face. He said that he had fantasized about that for a while. And he just had, and that he twice before he had attempted to do it, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Okay, that doesn't say I don't feel guilt or I don't have empathy. To me, that says I am fighting an internal battle against myself, that my intrusive thoughts are not just trying to win, but they're trying to come out in action that cannot be changed.
Yeah, and I think so many people like downgrade fantasy and how powerful it can be. And I think it especially like lends its hand to people that have OCD of any kind. The thoughts that loop in your head and you cannot stop them, but for them it's fantasy, and it gets more and more detailed each time they get more into it, until the point where fantasy does not excite them anymore and they want it to, they want that same release, and then it goes, well, if this isn't going to provide me the fulfillment and the whatever I want, but I'm still thinking about it constantly, maybe if I just go do it, I'll get that release.
Well, and that impulse control comes into play a lot too, because with the lack of impulse control, if you're fantasizing, like I told Rowan, if you're fantasizing, at some point something is going to happen that's going to trigger you, and you're going to not be able to stop the urge. Like I told Rowan, I personally have experience with growing up, my rage leading to severe violence. And I have been told by a psychiatrist that they absolutely think that if I hadn't gone through the abuse that I did, the horrific amount and type of abuse that I had gone through, that I would not be listed with just the mental illnesses that I have, but they definitely would have diagnosed me either as socio or psychopathic with narcissistic tendencies, because as a person, they're like, before the abuse comes into play, you have zero empathy. After the abuse, you have empathy, but even there, up until a few years ago, even still with empathy, extreme empathy, I could flip a switch. If I flipped that switch, I didn't feel anything.
Yeah, that's that good old BPD, baby.
Up next, John Wayne Gacy. Direct quote from Gacy: "I should never have been convicted of anything more serious than running a cemetery without a license." And I'm sorry, but that shit made me laugh.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
bro, really?
yeah. There's a lot about Gacy that I'm like, if I didn't know the actual details of what you did, some parts of it are just fucking until you put it all into context, and then you're like, never mind, never mind.
I just
The
like
clown.
you're found out, and that's what you've got to say for your no, bro. Okay, whatever. Yes, he was the community clown. He was a contractor hiding 33 murders. Denial and minimization show moral disengagement. His main focus traits were double life, narcissism, and lack of remorse. Yeah, the man couldn't even
Dude, and grandiosity, like, I know that's not one of the things they, like, attribute most to him, but this man thought he was brilliant. That he could outsmart everybody, even with the smell of rotted flesh from his home. Like, he literally thought everybody was stupid. Like, either stupid or gross. Like, he used other words, of course, but that was his whole thing. And the man did not actually have that high of an IQ. Like, that is one of the biggest misconceptions of serial killers everywhere. They think they must all have a high IQ, they must all be brilliant, blah, blah, blah. Nah, this man was a moron.
He was also not cute comparatively.
No, and he didn't do, like, the same manipulations as the other ones. Like, yes, he was manipulative, he did have his own things, but he wasn't handsome enough to pull off the stranger in a bar, or, oh, I need somebody to help me find my puppy, or something like that. He wasn't able to. He was able to overpower his victims, he was able to isolate them, and he was able to trap them.
Well, he was also able to infiltrate the community pretty great as a clown and find targets
and he
without
was
them
a
noticing him.
businessman, and that was the thing. Like, in some circles, he was a great businessman, blah, blah, blah. But everybody knew he had a temper. Everybody knew he was just a little off, even if they didn't know why. Like, it didn't creep him out or anything, but there was something a little off.
Moving into Dahmer, his quote, "I don't even know if I have the capacity for normal emotions. You just stifle them so long, you lose them." Unquote.
That one, it still, like, throws me through a loop because the level of introspection that quote actually shows is very opposing to a lot of other serial killers. Like, that shows I might know what happened to me to make me this way, but I don't know if I care anymore. Like, that definitely seems like a made monster than a Hollywood-born monster.
Well, what's sad about that quote was that quote, reading it, I was like, that is Gen X summed up in one statement.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially look at the time not just he was born, but the murders happened. That was very much how the world was, not just America, but it was shut up or I'll give you something to fucking cry about. Like, you're gonna, like, do what I say, like, and you're gonna be quiet, and you're just a burden in my life. Like, I very much feel like Gen X, that's how most of them was raised. Like, I didn't want to have kids. Yeah, I wasn't going to use a fucking condom, but why are you here? Get the fuck out of my face constantly.
Yeah, and him having childhood neglect, plus his mom was mentally ill. I believe they said she had schizophrenia. And like I said, she left with his younger brother at one point, just moved out.
Yep.
Decided she was getting a divorce from the dad and left him there. And he was in that house alone until his dad returned, which was months.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, like, no, I was not left alone for months and, like, something like that. But, when you are used to a parent being gone, even if they have a constantly busy work schedule, and yes, they're providing, but if you are used to them being gone all the time and used to like doing things on your own, you are fully independent, and then all of a sudden you have a parental figure right back in your face, that throws you through a damn loop. Like, because you have to understand, up until the age of 25, your brain is constantly just plugging data in it and rewiring things and doing things to keep you safe. So at a young age, if you are taught to take care of yourself, you are independent, you're basically blah, 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 and then all of a sudden there's somebody telling you what to do in your face, changing the rules, like, especially if they are unfair or abusive or like anything like that, that sends your neural pathway mapping haywire. That's not supposed to happen to a child.
No. And that's why his childhood neglect, his obsession with taxidermy, because again, they decided to show him how to stuff dead things when he was young, and abandonment trauma because he was abandoned. Like I said, his main traits of focus were emotional numbness, fantasy rehearsal, and objectification. Moving down to one of your favorites, Ed Gein. When I see a pretty girl, one part of me wants to talk to her. The other wonders what her head would look like on a stick. Unquote.
Yes.
And he had a domineering mother, religious guilt, rural isolation, and Rowan did not list this, but he also had sexual deviation.
Yes.
Which in that time was considered a mental illness and a psychosis.
Yeah, and they very much treated him like that, especially when he was young. Like, he was, like were not exactly nice to him. And I think that really affected how he viewed himself and then how he carried himself as an adult.
Well, and back then I don't think they really got into it, but I still, like I told you, I still believe that on top of schizophrenic, I believe he was autistic. High functioning, but I still believe he was autistic.
Oh yeah. Like we've said, they no longer use the term Asperger's. I understand why they no longer use the term Asperger's, but if they did, him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's definitely a good case of like that, what we talked about, how much your parents can truly affect your outbringing. Like, she was very abusive to him. She got mad at him if he even looked at another woman, like things like that. So he was very sexually repressed. He already felt like he was a monster and a horrible person, but he still wanted his mother's love and affection and approval, and those things warring against each other, especially when your brain isn't exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, honestly, I'm more shocked when people don't turn into fucking psycho killers when they've been through some shit like that. I'm like, look at you.
Yeah.
You.
Well, and his main traits were obsession and psychosis, blurred fantasy versus reality.
Oh yeah.
The latter, I think was the main problem for him, was that he oftentimes was fantasizing about things that would then turn into a full-blown delusion. I don't think he realized what was what because of the schizophrenia.
I totally believe that. Like, look at the things he did with the skin and the body parts, and that's as descriptive as I'm gonna get for you, 'cause you too. But he wasn't hiding things, he wasn't chopping things into bits and putting it in people's food. Like, no, he was making furniture and clothes, and honestly, in the darkest fucking twisted way possible. Like, it's almost fucked up whimsical. Like, think about fairies and how they take skin and bones and stuff and they make, like, furniture and stuff out of it. Like, it is a very dark fantasy I could see playing through his head, and him not fully grasping the gravity of everything while the delusions are going on, and then coming out of them and being like, oh, well, guess I'm living with the belt for the rest of my life.
At that point, he probably was just like, well, it is what it is.
Right? Yes.
Moving into your favorite BTK. For Dennis Rader, life was good. Both of them.
Dude, and that's so fitting. Honestly, so fitting for him because he was very egotistical. He really did believe, again, like other serial killers, that not just was he better than other people, he was smarter than them. Nobody was gonna catch them. Like, that's one of the reasons he fucked with the press and, like, talked to them, because he literally believed they would never, ever be able to figure out who he was. He played his part so well. Like, his town loved him. He was a member of his church, a high-standing member of his church. When he was
He was a church
arrested,
leader.
his mom, his wife, and his daughter said, it can't be him. He's so boring. He would never. Like, the man won't even, like, step on spiders. He was controlling, he was whatever, but never violent. Like,
Yeah, he also was a Boy Scout dad.
Pillar of the community. Everybody, when he was in, by the way, he was one of them that was arrested in my lifetime. 2005 is when he was arrested. Everybody in town, like, basically got mad at the cops. They're like, absolutely not. Like, the church, like, was upset. His family was in complete denial up until nobody basically could deny it anymore. But he played that role so damn well. So well.
Bet.
And again, that's the scariest part of these people. The ones that can blend in.
Yeah. His focus traits were extreme compartmentalization, control, and narcissistic delusion of order. I'm not sure. Delusion of order. I'm going to have to look that one up.
I am not 100% sure, but narcissists believe they are in ultimate control, that they know best, that they're better than everybody, and that they have the right to put down, belittle, or hurt somebody that is lesser than. So if the delusion,
I know what narcissism is.
So I think,
but this is not narcissism.
Yeah.
It's narcissistic delusion of order.
Yeah, so I was going to say, with the delusion of order, I was going to say it is probably not just a I think I am, it's a delusion of I know I am, and I will do anything possible to, like, make things fit my delusion, because my brain doesn't just kind of think I'm, like, better than, no, I am. Like, thinking you're a god, literally. I could be wrong. I do not know.
I'll have to look that up another time. Because I am literally trying desperately to stay awake to make it through this episode, and it's
almost
very
an
much
hour in.
Yeah, and we're close to being done. I'm gonna move through a lot quicker. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one. They are products of our time. End quote. He had childhood trauma, satanic fantasy ideology, and frontal lobe damage. His focus traits were grandiosity, ideological justification, and risk addiction. Moving into our next one was Aileen Wuornos. I am a serial killer. I would kill again, unquote.
Yeah.
Victim of abuse and sexual violence, claimed self-defense. Her focus traits were trauma reaction, rage as protection, and survival violence. Adds a gender dimension to neglect and mental health collapse. And then I know that this isn't technically a serial killer, but I just really think it's a very important addition, especially as the limited female serial killers, Lizzie Andrew Borden. I knew there was an old axe down in the cellar. That is all I knew. 1892 Massachusetts case, acquitted but socially convicted, focus traits, domestic pressure, repression, and gender expectations. I just think that it's important to realize that even though we don't have a lot of reported female serial killers, that it is anybody that could be.
Yeah.
Anybody. It doesn't have to be female or male, like specifically. It could be anybody across the board.
And I think that was one of our main goals of this episode, to teach you it could be the nice guy at a bar, it could be the creepy dude that dresses like a clown, it could be the woman that was messed with one too many times, or who knows, maybe the nice granny down the block that keeps inviting you for tea. You do not actually know who they could be.
Yep. Could be your favorite kindergarten teacher. You just don't know.
That one was great.
When I was younger, I had moments where rage took over until I drew blood or heard something break. That's why this isn't theory to me. I know what losing control feels like. Leaving my violent relationship in 2015 changed everything. I built my life back piece by piece. Now violence repulses me. But I still remember the feeling of the switch flipping and how therapy, distance, and self-work rebuilt my safety trigger. There was a point where I could not stop myself from violence if I was triggered at a certain point. 2015 changed that. I was in a situation of violence where somebody wasn't just being physically violent with me, but they were actually in my face screaming. And I knew in that moment that if I let myself react in any way, that one of us was going to prison and the other one was going to a grave. Period. That was the only way it was going to end. And I knew that I couldn't do that because I had a child that depended on me. I had children, but I specifically had a small child dependent on me that had nobody else. And I, for whatever reason, latched onto that thought, and it propelled me into healing. But that close, like, and imagine if that situation had happened and I didn't have that kid to latch onto, that idea that I desperately needed to stay in this world. Because the truth is, the wiring's not unique. It's the support. Oh, shoot, I've skipped a whole part of the paragraph. We love to pretend killers are born monsters. They're not. They're people who lost access to empathy and consequence. Look at the list of traits tonight. Which ones live in you? Because the truth is, the wiring's not unique. It's the support and compassion that make the difference. Monsters aren't born, they're made by pain, neglect, and a world that doesn't care until it's too late. Next week, part 2, the exceptions, we'll look at who stopped, who changed, and what that says about prevention and redemption. Until then, sit with this, not in fear, but in honesty, because facing our darkness is the only way we stop creating more of it. You know, being honest with yourself. You don't have to sit and tell the world, I think I might have the characteristics of a serial killer, and I feel alone a lot, and maybe it might one day happen. No, but you can say, hey, I'm having a lot of, I need to get into therapy because I'm having a lot of intrusive thoughts and that worries me.
Yep.
That's it. It's really simple to say things like that and not be like, I think I'm a serial killer.
Yes. And for our audience, my last thoughts are, by the time you see it, it will be the week of Halloween. So, instead of worrying about the things that go bump in the night, the demons, the witches, the whatever, maybe take a look at your neighbor that just gets along with everybody a little too well. The woman that maybe got hit one too many times. Because the things that are scariest in this world are very rarely demonic, monstrous, or made up. They are the things that look like calmness and stability, masking a dark, dark upbringing and coping mechanisms.
Unfortunately, oftentimes I think that's why I shy away from the people that want to be so open and happy, because it triggers warning bells in me. But connection is what keeps us from falling into that isolation trap that could lead us down that path as it is. So maybe don't huggy, touchy, feely with everybody, you know, but maybe say hello, be polite, get to know somebody if the opportunity presents itself, because you just never know what support, friendship, and love could do to somebody that's teetering on the edge of making a choice that they can't come back from. We love y'all. I hope that you enjoy your Halloween week and that your kids get lots of candy trick-or-treating, and you parents out there get to snag your fair share of favorites out their bag. And remember, as always, rage responsibly.
We're also available on Spotify. We said what we said, and we're just getting started. Thanks for listening. Now go rage responsibly. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.